Jennifer Bernardini, welcome to Scribecraft. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us.
Thanks for inviting me.
So, before we get stuck into discussing your quite prolific body of work, could you please tell the audience about a little bit about yourself and the journey that you took to worlds where you wanted to start writing and then actually took it up?
Sure. So I'm 45. I live in Connecticut. I think I've always been telling stories of some sort. It started as a kid, came from kind of a rough family life. So I used to make up this game called Storybook with my brother, where we would I would tell a story and we would like act it out. I didn't really take it seriously until I was about 35. I had a really horrible eye surgery. I had a detached retina and it's not a great surgery to go through. And I got really sick afterwards. And I thought at one point that I was going to die. Obviously, I didn't die. And when I came out of it, I was like, okay, well, I need to do the things that I've always wanted to do. So I started with Mirror in the Attic. That was my first one. And I tried to get that traditionally published and did not work. I got feedback saying that it was too gruesome. It's kind of like a murder horror thriller, and it did not go over very well. Ironically, even to this day, that is my most popular book. So I tried again. I wrote a book called We All Fall Down, and it is about a virus. Ironically enough, I wrote that before COVID started. And when COVID did hit, I thought maybe it was kind of not in good taste to continue with that. But after a while, I did. Again, I tried to go the traditional route with that. Didn't work. The three main characters in that one are a single mother, an ex-con, and a drug dealer. And a lot of the feedback I got was that these are unrelatable people, and people don't really know people like this and don't want to read about that. That ended up being a trilogy that I wrote. And after that, I decided I was not going to try the traditional route anymore. I was just going to self-publish. So that's what I've been doing since then.
Yeah, it's quite prophetic timing with We All Fall Down. Could
Yeah.
we just reverse back to your debut Mirror in the Attic? Um, how did you first come up with the idea for that? What inspired you? And I say, given it was your debut and you were kind of finding your feet as a writer, or finding your
Yeah.
voice, however you wanted to put it, um, what was, how did you find the process and you were growing into it?
Mhm.
How was that for you?
Well, that was actually based on a dream that I had. So that was the basis of the story, but a lot of that particular story has a lot of my own life in it. Uh, the family was based off my family. A lot of the places were based off places I've been that I grew up in, the town I grew up in. It's if you know me and if you knew me growing up, you can see that, the similarities. Part of it was kind of therapeutic to write about stuff like that in a fictional sense. Part of it was very easy for me to integrate my own life with these stories, and I think that it's kind of important to do so, makes them a little more genuine. When I started writing this first one, I didn't really think anything was going to happen with it. I just kind of went for it. So I think at that time, my kids were very small and I was a stay-at-home mom. So I would write in the morning before they woke up and a little bit before they went to bed. So after I wrote that one, that was kind of my routine for a while. I did stay at home with the kids for a while. Um, got a little bit harder when I did start going back to work. And my writing has definitely slowed down because I don't have that much downtime. But especially with that first one, I feel like I kind of went through that one really fast because I had the time to do it, but also because um, I don't know, it just seemed like it came really easily to make my life kind of part of the story, if that makes sense.
Yeah, they say write what you know, right? So,
Yeah.
um, looking at your body of work, though, it's clear that the main standouts are the, well, horror slash psychological horror,
Yeah.
thrillers, dark suspense. I think that's fair to say. Um, d- what would you pin yourself down as a quote unquote horror writer or someone who actually is happy to delve into multiple genres? And on why those genres in particular?
So I would not consider myself just a horror writer. I have a lot of, so after Mirror in the Attic, there is a there's three books I have out and one that I'm working on, and it all has the same detective in it, but they're all like standalone stories. And I would say they're more of like crime thriller, psychological horror-ish. I don't, when I think of horror, I think of monsters and I know it, a lot of blood and guts and scary stuff. And while I do have that in a lot of my books, I don't think that's all that they're about. I did uh so like the trilogy I wrote, I don't would not even consider that as horror. It's more of like an end of the world apocalypse thing. I think it's kind of a disservice to yourself if you label yourself as one thing and that's all that you continue to go with. Because as people, we want to do different things and we have different interests and we all have the right to change the things that we are interested in or that we write about. And just to say one thing, I think is a little bit of putting ourselves in a box that maybe we don't really want to be in.
Well, yeah, I'd agree. Certainly as an author myself who dabbles into different varieties, I think you have to in a way to try and keep yourself fresh and not get too bogged down in the same kind of genre, although there are subgenres within those that can work. Um, I'm curious, could you just talk whether in whichever field you work with, the crime thrillers, the more
Mhm.
horror aspect, could you take us through your process for building atmosphere and a character and do you begin with a place, a mood, like characters that you want to kind of explore? What's your starting point for when you begin a new project?
Usually I start with the characters and the story comes along afterwards. So I think I will have a main idea or a scene in my head, but the character development I think is the most important thing to me, and that includes how you integrate the backstory. A lot of times, there can be info dumps to get backstories, and I don't really think that's the right way to go. I also think that side characters are just as important as the main characters. I always keep in mind that side characters don't know they're side characters. They think they're the main character too. So I think it's important to have kind of like an idea of who everybody is before the story even starts.
And do you have a Bible, as it were, for the characters, or do you find them as you're writing?
Yeah, I don't plan anything, honestly. I don't plan, I don't outline. I will just have an idea and go with it. If they happen to change along the way, then they change along the way. And I think the change along the way also is reflective of people. I mean, we all change along the way as it is. But for me, I find the more I try to plan things or write things down and follow that, the more it messes me up. It's like if it's too rigid and I feel like I have to stay within these certain parameters, then I end up not being able to do anything because it's wants to go to a different direction and I'm trying to keep it over here and that's just not what's working.
So you don't have an A to B to C metaphorical GPS, as it were.
No.
You may have a vague idea of the destination you want to get to on the horizon, but you're happy to slash your way through the jungle and hope for the best.
Yes. Sometimes it works out for me. Sometimes in the editing process, I end up completely getting rid of chapters or scenes or people. But I don't know, I have a really hard time with outlining. I will sometimes, if I get stuck, write down ideas for like the next immediate chapter, but any further than that is just, it doesn't work for me.
So what kind of research do you bring for your stories, your characters and so forth? Because there's probably a balance to be made where, yes, you cut your way through the narrative
Yeah.
jungle, as it were, but then that has to be balanced, especially for the crime thrillers, a certain amount of realism and professionalism. So do you, um, so to speak, so you do a little bit of the story, but then you stop to research that make sure it's correct before you then move on, or again, how does your process work? And what, actually, and on that, following that, how long does it actually take you normally to complete a project?
So, I do have a master's degree in criminal justice, so it is something that I know quite a bit about. Um, so it's easier in that aspect because I did go to school for a very long time for that. Um, I will look up things if I don't know what they are. I do have reference books of like forensic science and things like that that I will refer back to. As for how long it takes, I would say a first draft usually takes, I don't know, anywhere from a couple months to 9 months. But like if we're talking start to like it's ready to publish, sometimes it's a couple years, sometimes it's really a short amount of time, but like for a lot of my books are bigger books. I do have some smaller ones. But like the bigger books, I would say maybe a year or two for full completion. Some of the smaller books, it depends because the smaller books I tend to, get through a little faster. There was a time, not so much anymore, but there was a time when I would be working on more than one book at a time, and I would always have something coming out. I don't really do that too much anymore. But I would say as a whole, I would say probably a year and a half from starting it to it ready, being ready to get out. I do tend to also write something first draft and then leave it and then write something else completely and then go back to the other one because I find if I write something and then immediately go back and try to edit it or uh make a second draft of it, it doesn't really work out too well for me because I know what I'm trying to say. So when I go back and read it, that's still fresh in my mind. But if I go back months and months later after I've worked on something else, it's almost like I'm looking at it like a new person.
Yeah, you just mentioned in terms of the things you're trying to say.
Mm.
Do you find yourself coming back to certain themes in your works, or is it a case of, right, I've covered this, I've explored this theme in this book, it's time to shelve that, move on, and explore something completely different in this new work?
I think a little bit of both. I know I tend to write a lot of female characters that are, uh, like the stronger sided characters. I don't like to really write about, and it's going to sound bad. I don't like to write where the woman or the female character in it is weak or helpless. I don't like that at all. And in a lot of my books, I have the main character as a woman who is, a stronger, whether it works out for her or not, she ends up being a stronger character. As for themes, it's kind of different in every book that I write. I don't really go into anything saying like this is going to be the theme of the book. Whatever it comes out to be is what it comes out to be. So I don't intentionally try to explore anything. It's just how things happen sometimes.
So it emerges organically.
Yeah.
Um, so you live in Connecticut, correct?
Yes. Yep.
To what extent does that part of the US play into how you approach settings, mood, and so forth?
It definitely plays into it a lot. Most of my books, at least will start in New England and New England, Connecticut, uh, setting. It's, I've lived here my entire life, so I don't really know another area to even think that I could write anything accurately. So usually they are in New England towns or they're in, I don't even know if I specifically say Connecticut, but I usually do start with like a vague New England town. Um, it's all I've ever known, and I don't feel like it would be genuine of me to try to write anything else because like I don't even I've never even traveled anywhere else. So I don't really think I could accurately portray anything else besides this.
Okay, more of writing what you know.
Yeah.
Well, makes sense. In my travels in the New England area, I always found it had a certain. I would often come around this time of year, at the autumn, Halloween time, and I always felt that kind of. You felt that new old world kind of
Yeah.
quality to it, that almost haunting
Yeah.
in the right circumstances. I mean, it may have been the case that I actually went to the Sleepy Hollow Village itself, and it gave off those vibes. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of
Um,
Connecticut is like that.
so, going back to Mirror in the Attic and say initially your attempts to try and publish through the
Yeah.
traditional route and the frustrations you found
Yeah.
with that, you went basically you think, right, it's time for the indie self-publishing
Yeah.
route. Um, did that, I mean, can I just double check, how long ago was that?
I believe it was 2000. I started that one 2017, so it's been a while. It's been quite a few years. Yeah.
So do you think we're recording this in late 2025, so do you feel in the past 8 years, give or take, the the landscape of the indie self-publishing route has shifted to be far more advantageous to your approach to doing that?
Yes, I definitely do. It's kind of a double-edged sword, kind of, because obviously anybody can self-publish. So there's a lot of stuff out there, both good and bad and everything in between. So it is very easy to get lost in all of that. I prefer it. Just it like shatters your soul when you are trying to get traditionally published and you submit and everything you're getting back is rejection. And it took me a bit to understand too that traditional publishers are looking for what sells. They want what is popular in the moment, what sells. That might not be what I am doing, and I'm fine with that. But that doesn't mean that I want to change what I'm writing to be able to fit into what's popular in the moment. So to be able to traditionally publish would be great. I mean, that's what everyone's goal is, but to be able to self-publish is more of a personal, I think, accomplishment to me. Um, I'm clearly not making the millions over here, but it's enough for me to be able to see that I have books out and that people are reading them. And maybe it's not like a massive amount of people, but I don't think I ever went into this with that intent. I just went into this with I have stories to tell and I want to tell them.
I think, well, based on the reviews I've seen, you've certainly got a fair number of people who've appreciated your work on that. So it's, as you say, you're not in it for the millions, but the
Yeah.
gratification
Hmm.
of actually, even if it's only a handful of people who said, you know what, I
Yeah.
really enjoyed Jennifer's work,
Yeah.
that itself has a huge amount of value on a psychic level, if not monetary value.
Right.
Am I correct in understanding you have your own imprint?
Yes. So I started exploding head fiction. Now, everybody always asks me what that is. I have migraines, and there's a type of migraine that's called exploding head syndrome. And it's basically when you hear loud bangs in your head, but it's like it's in your head. It's not real.
Okay, interesting. And could you, so what was the motivation behind kind of starting that imprint? And can you take the audience through again your motivations for that, but the process of how you did it and how it's going currently?
Sure. So I originally did it because I started to put out anthologies. I wanted to be able to help other people um, get their foot in the door as well and gain an audience. So I started exploding head fiction. I self-publish, so when I format my books, it's in there. It's really not a hard process to have it per se. The whole process of doing anthologies and putting that together is a little more strenuous and a little more time consuming and harder than actually having the imprint. Uh, I publish myself under Exploding Head Fiction now, and I publish my anthologies under that. I don't take in other people and outside of the anthologies to publish that way. So it's more of a kind of like personal thing that I do. But the main point of it was I really wanted to do some anthologies, and I thought that was the best way to go about it and actually like have a brand for them. But it's also since then morphed into something else. Um, so not only, it started with the books, but I've also made book covers and logos and things for people, and I do photography, so I have that under the same umbrella as well.
Yeah, how do you find the process of, it says on your website that you design book covers and your photography
Yeah.
and such. I mean, how do you find the process of doing that as well? It's, from words to a far more visual medium.
I love drawing. I've always been kind of an artistic person. But like I said earlier, I grew up in a kind of a rough household where none of that was tolerated. So it wasn't until later on in life that I was able to be, I was able to do these kind of things. So I I draw a lot. I have an iPad and I use Procreate. So when I'm making book covers, a lot of them are hand drawn that I draw myself. I do use I pay for a service with stock images that I use sometimes. A lot of them, though, are things that I've drawn myself. I find it very, I don't know, I like the aspect of creating things, whether it's creating things through words or through pictures. And to me, it just seems like a natural progression from books, like writing the books to making the covers. Also, covers can be very expensive. So I was like, well, I can draw and I know how to do these things. So I can do these for myself, and which ended up me doing them for other people as well.
Okay. And as part of your um, self-publishing empire, so to speak, um, how much time do you put into a kind of audience engagement and interaction and feedback with your readers? In the sense of, how active are your readers' feedback in how you approach your writing as you go forward into new projects, and how often do you try and kind of interact with your readership out there?
So I used to do it a lot more than I do now. I used to do a lot of book shows and vendor things, and I would interact with people. And I've done podcasts before, and I've done I've had like speaking engagements and things like that. The last couple years, it seems like there's less and less of those things to go around, at least around here. I've also been working more, so that kind of takes up a lot of my time. I find it a lot easier and a lot more enjoyable when I'm talking to like face to face with people. When I'm on social media, there isn't really that much interaction and both ways, not just, me not talking to people. I find most of the interaction or the comments I get about my books are face to face with people, both good and bad. It's kind of odd, I went to a book thing one time so I live in a town called Prospect, and I went to this book event in Putnam where I was selling my books, which is like 2 hours from where I live. And a man was there who apparently read all of my books, and he came in from another state just to see me, which is flattering, but at the same time, he just kind of sat at, because it was like in a bar, he kind of just sat at the bar and was like a little, too intense, to put it nicely.
Flattering in a creepy kind of way, by the
Yeah.
sound of it.
Yeah, to the point where the guy that was at the table next to me was like, I can't let you walk to your car by yourself when it was over. So, but honestly, that is the only one weirdish interaction I've ever had with anybody. Usually it's pretty, it's pretty positive. There have been times I used to sell my books at a farm market, and the farm market was on a green, and like right across from the green, there was a church, and the farm market was open on Sundays. So I would sometimes have some of the church people come over and like look at my covers, and they were like, "Ew, why are you doing this?" And I'm like, like I will tell them it's not for everybody, and that's okay. If it's not your thing, no hard feelings. We all don't like the same things, but it's church, I guess.
I'd like to talk a bit more about your process.
Okay.
Now, you said yourself you have a day job.
Yep.
You're involved in teaching. You've got kids, family commitments, and so forth. So obviously, you're not going to be able to sit down in front of your laptop for
Yeah.
10 hours a day with a
Yeah.
latte and
Right.
cracking out. But generally speaking, those things accepted. Generally
Mhm.
speaking, I'm curious to know what is your typical, if not writing day, then
Mhm.
writing session? Do you
Yeah.
have a ritual? Do you have like word count goals? A preferred time of day doing it? A preferred space where you can close yourself off and do it? Just take us through that, please.
So I don't have a word count goal. I typically will get up in the morning. I get up at 5 and I get up before my kids are up and, get some coffee. And then I usually hour and a half. That's basically it, what I get in. It's not even a continuous time most of the time, except, in the summer when there's no school. Both of my kids are in high school. So it's, making sure they're up. They're 14 and 15, so they can take care of themselves, but, they also don't want to roll out of bed. So once they're up, then I can have the rest of that time before I have to go to work to myself. I usually after work don't want to do much of anything. I do take time at work though, when we're slow or on breaks. I will write or read or, edit whatever I have. I used to substitute teach and I would do it there as well. So mainly in the morning, but if I can squeak in time here and there, even if it's little bits, then I'll do that as well.
Okay. And uh, when you do have the time to write these days, could you tell us a little bit about what your current project is or what your plans are for a future project if you're not working on something right now?
Sure. So I am working on the fourth book that is in the series that started with Mirror in the Attic. Mirror in the Attic, one of the main characters is a detective called Archie Davis. So this is one of the stories from him. I don't have quite a title yet for it. I'm kind of flip-flopping on it. Um, so there was Mirror in the Attic, and then it was Father Forgiveness, and then the third one was The Boy in the Suitcase. So this is the fourth one. It is a completely different story. They're all different stories. You don't necessarily have to read them in any kind of order. There are some like callbacks to the original stories, but they are all their own stories. And this one is just another case where he's solving a crime. I don't want to give too much of it because if you haven't read the other ones, the stories are about him. And when you're going from Mirror in the Attic through the other three, he kind of evolves into something a little bit different because he gets very disillusioned with his job. We'll say that. So the one that I'm working on now, he's in a little bit of a different space than when he was what he was prior to that. So other than that, I wrote a short story called The Dead Girl, and I am attempting to turn that into a graphic novel.
So it's interesting. You're coming back to Archie for the fourth time.
Yeah.
Would you say he's your favorite character and that's the reason?
Yes, I him and so he has a partner and their interactions together I really like. I'm very big on dialogue. I think my strongest point in all of my writing is the dialogue and I try to make it as realistic as it could be and I try to make it humorous and relatable. So those two and their interactions I think are probably two of my favorite characters that I have ever written. Archie is very he's a middle-aged man and he's very much like the rest of us, just going through life like what the hell is going on while trying to do his job, while trying, obviously to solve crimes because, he's a detective. But yeah, I seem to always come back to him, even if I'm writing something completely different.
Well, speaking of completely different, are there any new genres or unexplored aspects of the genres you do work in, which you're quite curious to try and excited about?
I do every once in a while think about writing something that is more fantasy based, or even like maybe like a light science fiction. I don't think I know enough science to be like a technical science fiction writer. They really interest me, and I used to read a lot of fantasy when I was younger. I just don't know if I would do a good job with it, so I don't know. I don't really ever go down that route. I do think there's some fantasy elements in some of the stories that I have written. The one in particular that I'm turning into a graphic novel has fantasy elements in it. And the short story book that I wrote seems on the outside. Some of those are a little bit more on the, I don't say unrealistic side, but like fantasy science fiction-y side, some of them.
Okay then. But generally speaking, if someone was
Mm.
to ask you what is Jen Bernardini's what is the best starting place, Jen Bernardini? Would you say that Mirror in the Attic is your best starting
Yeah.
point for someone to get into you, both in terms of your style,
Mhm.
your preference, seeming preference for Archie as a character, given you've stuck with him for so long?
Yeah, I would definitely say Mirror in the Attic is a good starting point. I do know a lot of people don't want to read full-size novels, so I do also, on the other end, will recommend the short stories, the Seams on the Outside one. There's a lot of, some of them are very short, and they're all completely different from one another. So I think that's also a good example of variety that I can produce.
Do you feel that variety helps keep you fresh as a writer?
I do because there's so many things that I see or that I just have like a weird second thought of, and I'm like, oh, well, what about that? And I think I will write it down in a notebook, and then when I'm like, I can't think of anything I want to write about, I will look back and be like, oh yeah, remember that one? Or I will just get so okay, for an example, somebody told me, I bet you can't write a story about a goldfish that murders people. So there's a story in my short stories about a goldfish that murders people. Yeah.
Well, okay. That's worth reading alone to see how
Yeah.
that pans out. Um, Many of the Scribecraft's listeners will be aspiring writers themselves. What's the single best piece of advice that you could give them?
Do what you want to do, write what you want to write. Don't worry about what's popular. Don't worry about what sells because it will always be more genuine when it's what you are passionate about and it's what you want to do. Trends will come and go, but the things that you are interested in will probably be around a lot longer.
And a related question, what what's the advice that you would give or the thing that you would say to a younger Jen Bernardini who was just starting off putting pen to paper for Mirror in the Attic?
Don't worry about what other people are going to think. I can tell you that is a big thing that prevented me for a long time. A lot of my characters, when there's like references to parents, the parents are awful parents, and the parents are based off of my parents. And for a long time, I was kind of hesitant to do that because what would people who know me say? But it got to the point where I was like, you know what? It is what it is. And if you don't like it, then don't read it. So don't be afraid to write things that are true to you because you are afraid of what other people will say.
Have you have you found it almost therapeutic in a way?
Yes. But at the same time, you do need to be prepared for the questions. Because yes, the majority of people that read my books, they don't know me in real life, so they may not realize this is based on, my own parents or this is stuff that happened in my real life. but there are people that do. And so you do need to, while it is definitely therapeutic to write that, just be prepared for people to make comments or ask questions. And it just comes with part of the territory. There is a lot of, especially in Mirror in the Attic, those two, the parents of the main character are essentially my parents. And people who know me know that. And at first I was like, well, my dad died years ago, so like I don't that's not an issue, but my mom and I don't I my sister read my book and she was like, I know, that's mom and dad. And I'm like, yeah. And she goes, well, what if mom says something to you? My mother's never read a single book that I ever wrote, so that never even came across. If that tells you any indication of what that's like. So I would just say stick to your own truth, but also be prepared for people to make comments and be able to handle that in a manner that's also true to you. I don't apologize for anything that I wrote because these are things that, even though it's fiction, these are things that have happened.
Okay. And taking all the body of work that you've put together so far and the ones that you hope to write in the years to come, when all is said and done, what are your hopes for how the world will view Jennifer de Bernardini's body of work and the legacy, the literary legacy that you leave behind? What are your hopes for those?
I hope that people are entertained, even if it's just for a little bit. I hope that when you're reading my books, you forget about whatever else is going on, anything that's bothering you or the state of the world. I don't really hope for more than entertainment. I hope that people see that I have done these things and think, if she can do it, then I can do it too. Because I think there's a lot of people, especially younger girls, that think that, especially in the horror genre or the criminal, thrillers, like that's not a place for women. And it's a place for us if we make it a place for us. And I really hope people can read my books and be like, she did it, I can do it too.
Awesome. Well, your website link will be put down in the description of this, but are there any other ways the audience can find out where your works are or get in touch?
Sure. So I my books are on Amazon, all of them. I'm also on Twitter, same name. I believe it's Jen Bernardini. Could be Jennifer. I think it's Jen. Same thing with Facebook and on Instagram. I do have a Exploding Head Fiction Facebook page as well.
Excellent. Well, Jennifer Bernini, thank you so much for your time on this episode of Scribecraft. To the audience out there, please like and subscribe wherever you are. And yeah, please go out and check out Jen's books, especially Mirror in the Attic, if you are into crime psychological thrillers. Jen, thank you so much for your time and good luck in your next project.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.